Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. A very warm welcome to this Monday, 3rd October 2022 morning Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam discussion. Today we are reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, entitled Pure Devotional Service, Text 17. Before we discuss on this verse, let's sing Jai Radha Madhava. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Shri Radhe, Jaya Nitai Sachinandana Gaurari, Nitai Sachinandana Gaurari, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura, Hari Bol. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakacarya Shodra Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Shila Isi Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Namacharya Shila Haridas Thakur की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय, मथुरा धाम की जय, जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय, मायापुर धाम की जय, गंगा माई की जय, यमुना माई की जय, तुलसी देवी की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, सामवेद भक्तवृंद की जय. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatare Sarvam Shri Krishnarpanamastu Krishne Matirastu Hare Krishna. So today we are reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, entitled Pure Devotional Service, Text 17. āyur harati puṁsām udyann astaṁ yann asau tasyarte yat-kṣaṇo nīta uttama-śloka-vārtayā. āyur harati puṁsām udyann astaṁ yann asau tasyarte yat-kṣaṇo nīta uttama-śloka-vārtayā. āyur harati puṁsām udyann astaṁ yann asau tasyarte yat-kṣaṇo nīta uttama-śloka-vārtayā. Word by word, āyuh, duration of life. Harati, decreases. Why? Certainly. Puṁsām, of the people. Udyann, rising. Astaṁ, setting. Cha, also. Yann, moving. Asau, the sun. Tasya, of one who glorifies the Lord. Rite, except. Yat, by whom. Kṣaṇah, time. Nīta, utilized. Uttama-śloka, the all-good personality of Godhead. Vārtayā, in the topics of. Translation: both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, except one who utilizes the time by discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. Purport: this verse indirectly confirms the greater importance of utilizing the human form of life to realize our lost relationship with the Supreme Lord by acceleration of devotional service. Time and tide wait for no man. So the time indicated by the sunrise and the sunset will be uselessly wasted if such time is not properly utilized for realizing identification of spiritual values. Even a fraction of the duration of life wasted cannot be compensated by any amount of gold. Human life is simply awarded to a living entity, Jiva, so that he can realize his spiritual identity and his permanent source of happiness. A living being, especially the human being, is seeking happiness because happiness is a natural situation of living entity. But he is vainly seeking happiness in the material atmosphere. A living being is constitutionally a spiritual spark of this complete whole, and his happiness can be perfectly perceived in spiritual activities. The Lord is the complete spirit whole, and his name, form, pastimes, quality, entourage, and personality are all identical with him. Once a person comes into contact with any of the above energies of the Lord through the proper channel of devotional service, the door to perfection is immediately opened. In the Bhagavad Gita 240, the Lord has explained such contact in the following words: endeavors in devotional service are never baffled, nor is there failure. A slight beginning of such activities is sufficient even to deliver a person from the greatest ocean of material fears. As a highly potent drug injected intravenously acts at once on the whole body, the transcendental topics of the Lord, injected through the ear of the pure devotee of the Lord, can act very efficiently. Oral realization of the transcendental message implies a total realization, just as fructification of one part of a tree implies fructification of all other parts. This realization for a moment in the association of pure devotees like Shukadeva Goswami prepares one's complete life for eternity. And thus the sun fails to rob the pure devotee of his duration of life, inasmuch as he is constantly busy in the devotional service of the Lord, purifying his existence. Death is a symptom of the material infection of the eternal living being. Only due to material infection is the eternal living entity subjected to the law of birth, death, old age, and disease. The materialistic way of pious activities like charity is recommended in the Smriti Shastras, as quoted by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Money given in charity to a suitable person is guaranteed bank balance in the next life. Such charity is recommended to be given to a Brahmana. If the money is given in charity to a non-Brahmana without Brahminical qualification, the money is returned in the next life in the same proportion. If it is given in charity to a half-educated Brahmana, even then the money is returned double. If the money is given in charity to a learned and fully qualified Brahmana, the money is returned 100 and 1,000 times. And if the money is given to a Veda Paraga, one who has factually realized the path of the Vedas, it is returned by unlimited multiplication. The ultimate end of Vedic knowledge is realization of the personality of Godhead. Lord Krishna, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Vedaischa sarvair ahameva vedya. There is a guarantee of money is being returned if given in charity, regardless of the proportion. Similarly, a moment passed in the association of a pure devotee by hearing and chanting of the transcendental messages of the Lord is a perfect guarantee for eternal life, for returning home back to Godhead. Madhama gatva punarjanmana vidyate. Madhama gatva. In other words, a devotee of the Lord is guaranteed eternal life. A devotee's old age or disease in the present life is but an impetus to such guaranteed eternal life. So before we discuss on this verse, let us offer some prayers. Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Namashreshtham Manamapi Shachiputram Matra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Murupurim Madhurim Goshthavati Radha Kundam Girivaram Maho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Adadandastranam Dante Idam Yacha Punah Punah Shriman Rupa Padambhojam Dhulisyam Janma Janmani. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, entitled Pure Devotional Service, Text 17. Āyur harati puṁsām, udyann astaṁ yann asau, tasyarte yat-kṣaṇo nīta, uttama-śloka-vārtayā. Both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, except one who utilizes the time by discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. This is a very significant and one of the most important verses of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, where it is very clearly mentioned how this uttama-śloka-vārtayā, is talking about Krishna, who is glorified by transcendental hymns. Shloka are the hymns, and uttama is udgata-tama, that which transcends the material modes of nature. That is transcendental to the modes of material nature. So when the transcendental hymns in glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is sung, one realizes one's original constitutional position as an eternal part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Uttama-śloka-vārtayā. Otherwise, there is āyur harati vai puṁsām. So it is mentioned that ayu means the age. Harati is taken away of all the living entities. Udyann astaṁ yann asau. So it is mentioned that every day the sun is rising and every night the sun is setting. And when this is happening, when the day is starting and the day is ending, every day is taking away one day from the life of the person in that particular form of life. So tasyarte yat-kṣaṇo nīta. So when the time is used in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, how is the time used in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? When one engages in devotional service. What are the different kinds of devotional service? Srila Prahlad Maharaj mentions there are 9 different kinds of devotional service. Starts with Shravanam, hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when the hearing is taking place through the ears, pravishta karnarandrena swanam bhava saroruham dhunoti asharmalam krishna salilasya yathasharat. So it is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that when the topics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is coming into the consciousness through the holes of the ears, pravishta karnarandrena swanam bhava saroruham. And what exactly does the topic of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, what is it made up of? Bhava saroruham. It is full of nectar. It is full of devotional attachment to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is very important. In the impersonal realm, any kind of attachment is considered to be not right. But in the personal realm, in the Vaishnava philosophy, it is so Krishna actually mentions mai asakta mana partha yogam yunjam madashrayam asamshayam samagram mam yatha jñāsyasi tat-kṣaṇo. So Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that the mind should be attached to him, asakta. Mai asakta mana. So the mind should be attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Partha, yan yogam yunjam madashrayam. So when the mind is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then the real yoga is performed, the real bhakti yoga. So bhakti yoga, or the loving devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is done when the mind wants to love the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The mind is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mai asakta mana partha. Then there is bhakti yoga, yogam yunjam. There is the linking with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mad ashrayam. Then one takes shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What happens when one takes shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Mad ashrayam. Asamshayam samagram mam. Without any doubt and in 100% totality, yatha jñāsyasi. One will know the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tat-kṣaṇo. And how does one know the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Shruno. When one hears about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam swagathak Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridayanthasto hi abhadrani vidonoti suhritsatam. So this is the when one is hearing Swakatha Krishna, Krishna Katha, so anything that is related to Krishna, directly Krishna's own pastimes or Krishna's pastimes in relationship. Krishna's pastimes are always in relationship with his devotees. And therefore, all Krishna's names, Srila Prabhupada actually mentions in many of his purports that all the names of Krishna is in relationship with his devotee. Like if we take Vasudeva, his son of Vasudeva, Devaki Nandana, Nandanandana, Yashoda Nandana. If we take Damodara, one whose abdomen has been tied with a rope. So that is in relationship with the pastimes of the Lord. So this is the names of Krishna is in relationship with his devotees and his pastimes. So when these, so this is the most important thing here to understand, to hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead's glorious pastimes and pastimes in relationship with his devotees and the pastimes of his devotees and the devotees of his devotees. And it continues. That is, Sri Kulashekar Alvar says, Mad Janma Phalamidam Madhukaita Bare, Mad Prarthaniya Mad Anugrata Esha Eva, Tvad Bhritya Bhritya Paricharaka Bhritya Bhritya Bhrityasya Bhritya Itimam Smara Lokanatha. So, Srila Kulashekar Alvar mentions in his prayer that this is the goal of, this is the real fruit of my life, O Lord. Mad Janma Phalamidam Madhu Kaita Bare. So Madhu and Kaitaba are the demons, and you are the enemy of Madhu and Kaitaba. Madhu Kaitabare. Mad Prarthaniya Esha Phalamidam Tvad Bhritya Bhritya Paricharaka Bhritya Bhritya Bhrityasya Bhritya Itimam Smara Lokanatha. So it's 7 times down the line. Srila Kulashekar Alvar says that let me become the servant, Bhritya Bhritya Paricharaka Bhritya Bhritya. So that is 5. Bhrityasya Bhritya. So 6 and 7. So 7 times down the line, let me become the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of your devotee. Iti mam smara lokanath. So this, what does this mean? There is endless, just like in the material world, there is endless material talk. In the spiritual world, there is endless spiritual talk. Actually, the material talk would become limited in terms of its subject, because anything related to matter it has to have a beginning and an end. That is the whole topic of the material world. Any topic related to matter has got a beginning and an end. But any topic related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternal. And anything linked to the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the succession of evam parampara praptam, imam rajarshrayo vidu, sakale neha mahata, yogo nashta parantapa. So as it is mentioned by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, that the real spiritual knowledge is attained in disciplic succession, parampara praptam. And who can understand this transcendental knowledge? Rajarshrayo vidu, one who has got the qualities of a Raja and a Rishi, qualities of an emperor and a saint. That person is able to understand the spiritual topics. Unfortunately, not everyone understands spiritual topics, because it has only when one is in the frame of humility, one is able to understand what is spirit. Spirit cannot be understood from the perspective of false ego, because false ego is just opposite to spirit. False ego is making one think that I am this body, I am this mind, I am this intelligence, and whatever I have is mine. Janasya mohoyam aham mameti. That is false ego. puṁsām stri mithuni bhavametam tayor mitho hridaya granthi ahur ato graha kshetra sutapta vitter janasya mohoyam aham mameti. So this is mentioned by Kapiladev. It's mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that this is that attachment. When the false ego is thinking that I am this body, immediately there is this attachment to the family life. Tayor mitho hridaya granthi, and then there is hard knot within the heart, the hard knot of material existence. Hridaya granthi ahur. Then there is graha kshetra sutapta vitter. There is the house, there is the land, there are the children, there is the relatives, and then there is money. So all this expansion of the false ego. Everything is an expansion of the false ego in the material world. And when there is expansion of false ego and identification with the false ego, then there is no question of realizing our original nature. To realize our original nature, the qualities that are needed is amanitvam. It starts with humility, adambhitvam, without any pride, ahimsa, non-violence, kshanti, patience, forbearance, arjavam, simplicity, acharyopasanam, that is rendering service to the spiritual master, shaucham, cleanliness, stharyam. Stharyam is in making control of the mind, keeping the mind under control, and atma vinigraha, keeping the senses under control. So these are the when one is in this frame of mind of humility, then one can understand what is one's original constitutional position as an eternal part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As Krishna says, Mama eva amsha, jiva loke jiva bhuta sanātana, manaha shashtani indriyani prakriti-sthani karshati. So Krishna says that all the living entities in this whole universe are my eternal part and parcels. But when they identify themselves with the mind and the five senses, there is a struggle that happens in the material universe. So this struggle, when this struggle is happening in the material universe, this āyur harati is happening. Whatever is mentioned in this particular verse, because there is identification with the material body. And when there is identification with the material body, one is thinking that I am born, I am getting the disease, I am growing old, and I am dying. But is that the reality? Is that the truth? It is false ego that is saying all these things. The false ego is saying that I am taking birth. The false ego is saying that I'm getting disease. The false ego is saying that I'm growing old, and the false ego is saying that I'm dying. But what is the original nature? The original nature is Satchidananda. So we are eternally existing, and that's why it is truth. The real truth. What is the real truth? The real truth does not change according to time, place, and circumstance. The real truth is always the real truth. It never changes. If something is changing according to time, place, and circumstance, then it is not real truth. It is based on matter, because matter changes according to time, place, and circumstance. So therefore Krishna says, na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sata, ubhayor api drishtantastva nayos tattvadarshibhi. So Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that na asato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sata. So whatever is eternally existing never changes, and whatever constantly changes is not eternally existing. So that is in relationship with our body. So dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavanam jara tatha dehantaram prapti dhiras tatra na muyati. So because there is the proprietor of the body within the body, there is this change that is taking place within the body. There is this childhood, youth, and old age, and similarly dehantara prapti. The body has to be given up, and then there is anta of deha. The body ends. The life of the body ends. Therefore, dhiras tatra na muhyati. So Krishna says that a sober person does not get bewildered by these changes. And that is what, when one is absorbed, so this is atma ramascha munaya nigranthapi vurukrame kurvanti ahetu kim bhaktim mitham bhuta guno hari. So when one is in that state of totally understanding one's original eternal nature as an eternal part and parcel of Krishna, so when one is in that state, one has nigranthapi urukrame. So nigrantha. So that is hridaya granthi aho. So we had understood in the previous verse where there is hridaya granthi. So there is hard knot of material existence. So when there is atma rama, when one is just relishing one's eternal constitutional position, which is one's original existence, then there is nigrantha. The hard knot is just taken off. There is no hard knot. Nigranthapi urukrame. Then there is kurvanti ahetukim bhaktim. That is the costless devotional service. So when one is under the influence of matter, the devotional service is based on give and take with the Lord. So Srila Prahlad Maharaj actually mentions in his prayers, Savai Vanik. He says that someone who is doing a give and take relationship with the Lord is actually a businessman, because that is what the businessman is generally doing. They are selling a good and they are getting back money in return, and the money that they get back in return would be more than what they would have spent to get that good in the first place, and then they are making profit out of it. So this is what a businessman does. Businessman is selling some good or services, and they are making profit out of it. And so initially, when the devotional service is not pure, the relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unfortunately like a business. And therefore, Krishna actually mentions in Bhagavad Gita that 4 kinds of people come to me. Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukritino arjuna. So Krishna actually mentions that the 4 kinds of people who come to me are actually pious people. They have done good activities, good karma, sukriti. And who are those 4? Krishna says, Artho, Jignasur, Artharthi, Jnani cha Bharatarshava. One who is in distress, Artho. One who is inquisitive, Jignasu, Artharthi. One who wants wealth, and Jnani, one who is in knowledge. So if you look at Artha and Artharthi, one who is in distress and one who wants wealth, if you look at those 2 people, they are approaching the Lord with some expectation. So the Artho, or the distressed person, is approaching the Lord with the expectation that the distress will be removed. So that's their expectation. And so unfortunately, the way they are coming to the Lord is that, oh Lord, I will give you my service. In return, please remove my distress. And the third category that is mentioned, Artharthi, they are saying that, oh Lord, I'll give you my service. Please give me more wealth. So there is Artharthi. So removing distress and give me more wealth. So there is an expectation of something in return from the Lord. And actually Krishna says that that's okay. In the beginning stages, it is okay. And bhajante ma. So Krishna actually says that they are rendering devotional service to me. Chaturvida bhajante ma. And what kind of people are they? They are sukriti. They are actually performed pious activities. So to come to the Lord even with expectation of something there is piety in it. It is only pious people who can do that. Then when one slowly, when this rendering of devotional service keeps on happening, there comes a stage when one realizes that that all this is temporary, that my distress is temporary, and if I want wealth, whatever wealth I will accumulate, that is also temporary. So at a certain point, while dealing with the Lord in terms of business, one suddenly would get a realization that uh, that this is what happened with Dhruva Maharaj. So Dhruva Maharaj wanted his father was Uttanapada, and he had a stepmother who was saying that you should not sit on the lap of your father. And then Dhruva Maharaj got sad, and he he said that how can I rectify the situation? So he was in the situation of distressed. He was feeling distressed. So he was in the category of artha. So then his mother says that uh, you go to the forest and then you worship, meditate on Vishnu, and Vishnu will provide you whatever you want. And then he goes to the forest, and Narad Muni is actually gives a test to him, and he says that this is not going to be easy. It's better that you go back to your kingdom and just enjoy whatever you have at the present moment. But Dhruva Maharaj is fully convinced that he wants to meditate on Lord Vishnu, and so basically he does that, and then finally he actually he sees Lord Vishnu personally, and then he says this wonderful prayer. He says that Swamin Kritarthosmi Varamna Yache. So when he sees the Lord, Sthana Bilashi Tapasi Stitoham Yam Prapyavan Deva Munindra Vrinda Kachan Vichinman Apidivya Ratnam Swamin Kritarthosmi Varamna Yache. So he says that when he sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, in front of him, he says that I was looking for some pieces of glasses, but here you are, uh, the real transcendental jewel. So when I see the real transcendental jewel, what do I do with this pieces of glasses? So, oh Lord, I am not asking for anything from you. Varamna yache. I don't want any kind of benediction from you. Uh, I'm fully satisfied now. So that is the position of rendering loving devotional service to the Lord, even when there is some expectation of something in return. So therefore, there is this famous, beautiful verse in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam which says, "Akama sarva kamava moksha kama udaradhi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param." So it mentions that if one does not have any desires, akama, or one has sarva kama, one has thousands and thousands of desires, or one has desire of moksha kama, one has desire of getting liberation. So one might not have any desires, one might have lots and lots of desires, or one might have the desire of getting liberated. Tivrena bhakti yogena. So it mentions in this verse that one has to render loving devotional service to the Krishna with full intensity. Tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param, and worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So this is the transcendental position of rendering loving devotional service to the Lord, even in the sense of getting something back in return, expectation of something back in return. Of course, when one reaches that stage of pure devotional service, there is kamasya nendriya priti, labho jiveta yavata, jivasya tattva jignasa nartho yascha iha karmabhi. So it is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that when one reaches that pure devotional state, the service of pure devotional service, that is the jignasu and artha and jnani. So one who is inquisitive and one who is in knowledge. So the person who is in knowledge, when they reach, if in that stage of knowledge, there is kamasya na indriya priti. In that stage, there is no indriya priti. There is no love for sense gratification. There is no attachment to sense gratification. Kamasya na indriya priti, labho jiveta yavata. So in that state, one is so much fixed at the lotus feet of the Lord that that one is happy with whatever comes by its own accord. One is not separately endeavoring to accumulate material things. That is the highest transcendental position of pure devotees. They are not separately endeavoring to get anything material. Whatever is coming of its own accord, they are accepting it. Labho jiveta yavata. But what are they actually doing? Jivasya tattva jignasa. So the main thing that is being done is tattva jignasa. So understanding my original constitutional position. Who am I? That is the main activity of someone who has totally surrendered onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Na artho cha iha karma bhi. So they are not after artha. They are not after the money that is coming through the karma, through the activities that one is performing. That is the transcendental position. So this is so in that state, anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karotiya sa sannyasi sa yogi cha na niragnir na cha akriya. So Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that who is a real renunciant, sannyasi, and who is a real yogi, one who is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Who is that? That is anashrita karma phalam. So one is doing activities, but without being attached to the activities, to the result coming from those activities. So karma phalam. So every activity that we are doing is accruing results on us. So if you are doing good activity, we are getting pious credits in back. If you are doing bad activity, we are getting impious credits in as a return. And therefore, there is this cycle of birth and death. So when there is identification with the results, so I am doing this activity and I have to get back this in return. If we are doing activities with that frame of mind, then unfortunately we are binding ourselves in the cycle of birth and death. But when we are doing the activity and saying that whatever be the result, I am offering it to the lotus feet of the Lord, that is anashrita karma phalam. So that means that one is not attached to the result coming out of the activity. So when that is happening, anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karotiya sa sannyasi sa yogi cha na niragnir na chakriya. So Krishna says that it is the real renunciant is not the person who does not do anything, who does not lit the fire to cook. Niragni akriya, who does not do anything. They are not the real renunciant. The real renunciant is someone who does the activities but is not attached to the results. Anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karotiya sa sannyasi sa yogi cha. So this is the frame of mind that one has to develop, and this is the frame of mind with which Arjuna fought the war of Kurukshetra. He initially did not want to fight, and he gave lots and lots of different reasons that why he did not want to fight. But then in the end, he said, Karpanya dosho apatha swabhava pritchami tvam dharma sammoda cheta yes shreyasya nishchitam bruhitan me shishyasteham sadi mam tvam prapannam. So Arjuna says to Krishna that now I don't know what I should be doing. I have become a kripana. I have become a miser, unfortunately, because I do not understand what I should do. Therefore, I am bewildered now, and I don't know what is the real religious principle that I should be doing, executing. So therefore, you please tell me what is ultimately beneficial for me, Krishna. Yes, shreyasya nishchitam. Please tell me for sure. Bruhitan me shishyasteham sadi mam tvam prapannam. So then Arjuna says that now I am your disciple, O Krishna, and I have surrendered unto you. Please tell me what is ultimately beneficial for me. Now that is what we were talking about, amanitvam. So until that point, Arjuna was in a state of relationship of friend with Krishna, and he was trying to make his own arguments to tell to Krishna that why he should not fight. And at a certain point, he realizes that this is not going anywhere. It is just going in circles. It is not leading me to anywhere. So then he says that I am now surrendering onto you, Krishna. Prapanna. Mam Tvam Prapanna. I am surrendering onto you, Krishna, and I am your Shishya now. I am your disciple now. Please instruct me what is ultimately beneficial for me. And that, to do that, one needs to have humility, amanito. Otherwise, one can never do that. And that is the starting point of spiritual realization, the humility. And that humility and that surrender is giving one the faith. And that faith is giving one the transcendental knowledge. As Krishna says, Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. Tat parat samyatendriya jnanam ladva param shantim sthanam prapsyasi shashvatam. So, param shantim achirena adhigacchati. Jnanam labdhva param shantim achirena adhigacchati. So, Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that when one has got the faith, so how is the faith coming? Faith is coming through humility and surrender. The faith is getting generated. From where is the humility coming? That one has to have the costless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the pure devotee. Otherwise, person can be told many number of times and given thousands of reasons to help the person understand person's original nature, which is totally different from what we see outside. What we see outside is skin, flesh, bones. It's all, so the skin is covering the flesh is covering the bones, and inside the bones there are organs, which are like the heart is within the structure of the bone. The brain is within the skull. So all these organs, and they are all acting involuntarily. They are just acting. Like the heart keeps on beating, and the heart beats. The blood circulation happens. The blood is going to all the parts of the body. So all this is happening involuntarily. It is just naturally happening, and all this is external to us. It is amazing. But when we are taking birth, immediately we are saying that I am this body. But actually, when we have this humility to understand our original nature, we know that this has nothing to do with me. This is all external to me. The only thing that is real, that is to do with me, is the consciousness. And consciousness is the symptom of our original nature. What is our original nature? Our original nature is, as Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, na jayate mriyate va kadachit, nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuya, ajo nityam shashvatoyam purano, na hanyate hanyamane sharire. So Krishna very clearly mentions in Bhagavad Gita what is our original nature. That at no point in time we ever came into existence, and at no point in time we will ever die. Ajo nityam, unborn, eternal, shashvatoyam, eternally existing, purano, the oldest, na hanyate hanyamane sharire. When the body gets destroyed, we do not get destroyed. So if at every moment this focus is kept in terms of understanding our original nature as eternal part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then there is no āyur harati vai puṁsām. Because the āyur harati, this age, decrease of age and approaching the death, is only for the body. It is not for our original self. So then, and how does one? So this is another thing of understanding, which is this clearance of this false ego. How does the clearance of false ego happen? That happens when one is engaged in the 9 kinds of devotional service. as Srila Prahlad Maharaj mentions, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. So one is hearing, and then one is talking about the Lord. And then when the hearing and talking becomes very strong, there is smaranam. One is remembering the Lord. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam. And when there is remembrance, then there is Pada Sevanam. One is rendering service to the lotus feet of the Lord. Then one is doing Archanam. One is giving the flowers to the Lord. Vandanam. One is saying prayers to the Lord. Dasyam. One is becoming the servant of the Lord. Sakhyam. One is become the friend of the Lord. And Atma Nivedanam. One is totally surrendered onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when all this, it's called Navavidha Bhakti. So then when this Navavidha Bhakti is happening, one realizes one's eternal position as an eternal part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in that state, there is, so Srila Prabhupada actually mentions in his purport, he says, in the Bhagavad Gita 240, the Lord has explained such contact in the following words: endeavors in devotional service are never baffled, nor is there failure. A slight beginning of such activities is sufficient even to deliver a person from the greatest ocean of material fears. So this is nehabhikrama nashosti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. So na iha abhikrama nashosti. So Krishna mentions that whatever small step one takes in the spiritual direction, it can never be taken away. The material wealth one accumulates, one cannot take it to the next life. Once one has accumulated some material wealth, one has to just give it up. When the body dies, one gives it up, and then whatever happens to the wealth, it happens. There might be a lot of things that are happening for the wealth, but the spiritual gain that one gains during a particular life, that is eternally an asset. So if one has accumulated 1% of spiritual gain in this life, that 1% will go to the next life. And then one starts from 1% in the next life. One might go to this 2% in the second life. Then the 2% in the second life is kept. And one goes to the third life, one starts with the 2%. And similarly, slowly but surely, one is going back home, back to Godhead. So that's why Krishna says that there is no loss or diminution in this activity of Krishna consciousness. In any other activity, it is limited by the life that one has. Within that lifespan, whatever it is, someone becomes extremely famous, for example. That fame is limited to that particular body. So once that body, and even even within the time frame of one particular body, the fame can go to the top, but then it will come down as well. So it doesn't stay the same forever. So this is why the engagement in loving devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a supreme asset that can never be taken away from the living entity. So swalpamapyasya dharmasya. So therefore Krishna mentions in that verse that even a small step in the direction of Krishna consciousness, the direction of spiritual activity, can save one from the greatest dangers. Swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. So, and what is the greatest danger that one generally sees in the material world? The greatest danger is mrityu sarvaharascha. So that is death, because our original nature is eternal. Because our original nature is eternal, we want to stay eternal. But our body, material body, is not eternal. So it's in a paradoxical situation, and therefore, when our subtle body, So what is a subtle body? Subtle body is mind, intelligence, and false ego. The gross body is bhumi, rapa, anala, vayu, kham. Uh, so the earth, water, fire, air, and the space. That is the gross body. Actually, the space starts becoming subtle. So when we go to the air and space part, it starts becoming more subtle and subtle. And then there is mana, buddhi, and ahankara, the mind, intelligence, and false ego. So this mind, intelligence, and false ego is the subtle body, and all whatever activities we are doing in this life is getting stored in the subtle body as impressions of our activities. And that subtle body is causing one to take birth after birth after birth. So if subtle body is purified of all these material attachments, one will realize one's original nature. And when one realizes one's original nature and is situated in that original nature, one will go back home, back to Godhead. So that is the that is what can be avoided when we look at this verse. Āyur harati vai puṁsām, udyann astaṁ yann asau, tasyarte yat-kṣaṇo nīta, uttama-śloka-vārtayā. So by so āyur harati vai puṁsām, by both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, except one who utilizes the time by discussing topics of the all good personality of Godhead. So how does one escape the this reduction of the duration of life and approaching death? How does one escape? When one utilizes the time by discussing the topics of the all good personality of Godhead. Because when the mind is absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yam yam vapi smaran bhavan tyajati ante kalevaram tam tam ivayati kaunteya sada tadbhava bhavita. If the mind has always been engaged in discussing the material topics and attached to the material topics, at the time of death, one is thinking about that material topic, and then one is continuing the cycle of birth in that realm of material topics continuously. On the other hand, if one has absorbed oneself in hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his pure devotees, the mind is attached to hearing those topics. So at the time of death, one is fixed in those topics. Then one is promoting oneself into the next stage of spiritual evolution, which is one's understanding of one's original constitutional position as eternal part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram ya prayati samadbhavam yati nasti atra samshaya. So to conclude this verse, we can take this particular verse from Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna says that antakale cha mam eva smaran muktva kalevaram. So if at the time of death one is remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, smaran muktva kalevaram, ya prayati samadbhavam yati nasti atra samshaya. Krishna says that that person will surely attain my nature, attain my abode. There is not even an iota of doubt. Yati nasti atra samshaya. There is not even an iota of doubt that such a person will attain my nature and will go back home, back to Godhead. This is the power of the transcendental topics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When one is engaged in hearing, chanting, remembering, and rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees, one is in that state where one is totally devoid of all material contamination. And one is devoid, and one realizes one's eternal position. And this realization of the eternal position as an eternal part and parcel of Krishna saves one from this āyur harati vai puṁsām. udyann astaṁ cha yann asau, tasyarte yat-kṣaṇo nīta, uttama-śloka-vārtayā. So this, with the prayer that let us always engage in uttama-śloka-vārtayā, in discussing about the transcendental topics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his wonderful devotees. I would like to conclude this discussion. In terms of the comments, there is Shreya Singh Rathod, Radhe Radhe, and Radha Krishna saying Jai Shri Ram. With this, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshitarine. Sarvam Shri Krishnarpanamastu Krishne Matirastu. Hare Krishna. Thank you.